Season 1 of Fucking Rad Snowboarding Podcast is brought to you by the love of the sport. This is episode 4. I met Tom Burt in the winter of '94 on the way to a Transworld Industry Conference. We chatted briefly in the airport as we waited for a shuttle to Big Sky, Montana. Later that weekend, I would introduce him to my sponsor, Ice Age Snowboards from Hawaii. And a few months later, I got the news that he was riding for Ice Age. He was much higher up the ranks than I was, to say the least. That next summer at the Ice Age cabin on the Zigzag River down at Mount Hood, Tom had a bedroom to himself while my best friend Chris and I slept in the living room on a big chair and a little couch. I remember Kevin Jones, who was riding for Lamar at the time, slept out beside the woodshed under the stars. We all rode together, and it was some of the best times I can remember. This is an interview with Tom from a couple of weeks back. I got a hold of him at his house down in California.
The first board I rode was this plastic Sims Lonnie Toft with a skate deck on top of it, and I borrowed it from Eric Armbruster and went up Mount Rose and hiked. So that was the first board I rode. I used that board and another board, this wooden board that Eric had made for kind of the first year, and then I bought a Sims. It's basically a 1500, but it was before they had FEs or anything like that. It was just a 1500. It's a gold top board. There was only a few of them made, I think, that this guy KJ had, and then he had sold it to Bob Klein, and I bought it from Bob Klein. I still have it. I don't know. I have like 35 on my ceiling and in my living room, and then I have some more. I don't know, 15 or 20 boards. Well, I was going to college all the way to into 86, trying to be, I basically became a professional snowboarder in 85, so I was trying to do both, but it wasn't working. So I basically tried to be a full-time snowboarder in the 87, 88 season. Yeah, so I rode, Avalanche through, 91 or something. We did mountaineering in 89 in Alaska, gnarly in 91, Mexico in 80, maybe 90 or 89 or 90. Went to Europe, did Chamonix for the first time in 91. Spent a month there doing descents. I grew up skiing. Kind of big mountain skiing was what we learned, when I was a kid. The kind of 70s freestyle movement in skiing had just happened, and when I grew up, you didn't want to be that. That's when they did ballet, moguls, and then aerials. We liked the aerial, stuff, but it was a little too structured. We did a lot of jumping and stuff. But we were, we skied on long skis and GS'd everything. I never skied moguls. I still can't ski them. I can snowboard them, but I can't ski them. And then we hiked a lot as kids with our skis. And then I did a lot of rock climbing. So when we started snowboarding, a lot of resorts weren't allowing snowboarding. Backcountry became important to us. Jim and I just made a list of places we wanted to go, mountains we wanted to go to, and just tried to go do that. Sponsorship was pretty minimal, but we sold the trips to, magazines. At that time, you have to remember, you had 3 magazines, basically. International Snowboard magazine started in 85, but, Transworld and Seymour didn't start till 89. But when they started, they needed content. And so it was an easy sell for us to sell a story to a magazine on a trip that we were going to wanted to go do. And so it became a venue for us because, we weren't training to win contests. We didn't really care about that. Well, if you look at the first snowboarder magazine, or Transworld and all those early days, that's why Avalanche was so prevalent. You couldn't buy one because they didn't have money to produce any. But Avalanche was a huge name at that point because we figured out the marketing thing with the magazines and how to do it without running basically ads or spending any money. So we were the first to kind of do that, like set up the trips and do that. And so we kind of paved our own way, and then we'd use the magazine's letters that said they're going to publish it to help us, send letters to wherever we were going to try to get help with lodging or get help with lift tickets or whatever, It allowed us to sell the trips. That was pretty much how we pulled it off. I went from Avalanche to Kemper, and then then tempered to Ice Age. Marketing changed because, magazines were one thing, but then video started basically in 90, 91. There was in-industry videos, like Sims made a video, like a Sims team video, and Burton made a Burton team, but the first videos were, the Totally Bored and Fall Line Film movies. I was in Fall Line's movies, original Totally Bored, they only made one, and then Fall Line made about 3 movies, or 2 or 3 movies before Totally Bored 2, or TB2 was put out, and I worked with Fall Line. But so the video thing changed, being known just out of the magazines to being known more widely in the industry, skiers, snowboarders, because they started watching what we were doing. But I was in quite a few movies at that time, the Totally Bored series, Creatures of Habit series, the North Face series. There was a lot of different filming going on, but we also did the trips usually with, a motion photographer and a still photographer, so we were hitting both sides, he double dipped on. They still do that today. For the most part, I snowboarded with Jim. But when I went into filming and started filming, then Jim didn't go into filming. He did some a little bit, but not a lot. There's a lot of mountaineering trips that basically most people know nothing about that we did. There was a lot of times articles in the magazines, but no one ever saw any footage. We pretty much, if you look at Further, Deeper, Higher by Jeremy, we did that exact same circuit. That was kind of like our bucket list of going around and doing trips and snowboarding. And we pretty much did it with very few people knowing that we did all of that. But back then, to film it was a whole nother thing because, it had to be shot. It would have been shot in film, and someone carrying film cameras and out mountaineering is not easy. Carrying a video camera, so much easier, and then helmet cams and all the small technology these days really makes it doable to make a film like the films like they've made. It still takes a lot of work with the filmers, but it's basically almost logistically impossible to film with film unless you have lots of money. We had no money, but like our first trip to Alaska was a month trip on a glacier, hiking, and flew in with a plane. And, if you look at Deeper, we did that in our first year, it's just different time frame. And, we didn't make any money on snowboarding. If there was any money for us, that's just the reality of it. Said, I'm going to be a pro snowboarder. I'm not going to teach. They flipped out, like, what are you talking about? Why would you ever do that? But then at that time, the Juicy Fruit commercial came out there in '87, and so that was the first actual money that I ever kind of made on snowboarding was the Juicy Fruit commercial. So they saw all those checks come in. Yeah, I snowboard from November till usually June. Well, I've been judging the Freeride World Tour, and I started doing North Face Masters Tour, and then now I'm doing I go to Europe a couple times, Alaska. It keeps me going. And I usually do Baker, and, once in a while something else comes up. Last year we did Point Break 2, or well, not 2, but Point Break, the remake. You get projects like that sometimes and things. I was doing stunt coordination with snowboard teams. My board's designed how I want it. I just chose the best board that they had at the time, that worked for me and my style of riding. That's the thing is that, I basically build a board that works for my style of riding. I don't want to do a bunch of turns down the face. I design a board for making a long turn that will hold together when you're going fast and making a turn like that. So there's a lot of perception out there of what's great to ride and what's not. And there's lots of different options. I am a pretty good study of people and watching people ride, and I see most of the time a lot of problems that people have is that their board fails when they're trying to do things. It's not necessarily their abilities, but the board isn't designed for what they're trying to do on it. And so you see a lot of failure in that direction. Taper and snowboards became a big thing. I don't know. It might have been like 8 years ago, but I've been riding tapered boards since the 80s, So I've always ridden the tapered board. It's the same thing. It's like rocker, everyone's like, oh, rocker, it's like, well, shit, the swallowtail, the winter stick swallowtail is full rocker, full rockered up front board. It's only been that way since 72 or some shit. I started, the first judging of a mountain riding contest was the World Extremes in '92 in Alaska. I judged the Extremes for 2 years, so '92 and '93, and then the Extremes went away. And then the King of the Hill started, but that, I wasn't involved with any of that. And then that pretty much faded away. The European contests, they were calling themselves the Freeride World Tour. And then over here in the U.S., the North Face Masters had started a tour. And I got asked to judge that, so I was judging the North Face Masters, so I became the head judge for that. And at the same time, I also judged Travis's contest. So I started his first one in Jackson Hole. I judged that one, and then I judged the Supernatural and Ultra Natural. The North Face Masters and the Freeride World Tour became one tour, i.e. the true Freeride World Tour or the World Tour, and so I started judging that. So I've been a head judge for the Freeride World Tour. The progression of mountain riding, which has gone from steep riding of lines, which, when I was doing it was trying to figure out what was possible to go down. Since then, there's still that side, which has been kind of like, like Jeremy and the, crew, kind of what's possible. And then there's the Travis side, Gigi and Nicholas, and, so they've been taking the freestyle, which Johan kind of, Olsen back in the day, he kind of brought that in, really bringing the freestyle into mountain riding. I mean, Craig was pretty good at it too, Kelly, but they brought in more of that, like in using the mountain in different than just doing a line. They were doing things within a line, and so that kind of changed the dynamic. It's almost like surfing, where you have from trussels to pipe. One place you're pulling in, another place you're teeing off. So the biggest change, though, like I say, is that the riders have to be more well-rounded to do well overall. Well, yeah, I mean, now you have to qualify, and, you have to show your skills. Back then it was not as much because there wasn't as many people doing it. So to have a contest, it was, and people had skills, they were good riders, and it wasn't, but, you have to think that those guys were definitely, calculating what they were doing. They didn't come out maimed or broken, very rarely, So, what people thought was beyond the edge at that time now has changed. The edge has changed a lot further. People are like, you can't do too much further, or if you step off, you're going to be stepping, and so that's the thing, is that people find that edge and keep going to that edge. I mean, that's just the reality of it. Progression happens, and someone's got to be out there where people are going, that guy's nuts, So, and, that always continues today. And then the standard changes, and then that isn't so nuts. It's this other person that's nuts. I have no complaints. I've got to do tons and tons and tons of snowboarding, and which I love to do. But it's allowed me to have a great lifestyle and own a home and do things like that. I could have pursued making money more. It's one of those things, like when you do that, you're also giving up a lot of your freedom, because also you're doing things for your sponsor. It's always a funny thing, same thing, sponsorship is a job. It's marketability and the whole thing. It's a crazy world. And if you think of, Rank with Farmer, they were selling a personality on top of their skills. And Palmer too, it's like they're very smart people. Playing a derelict is a very good way of getting attention, and being an ass, that's one really good way of getting attention, and it works really well. And they played that card freaking phenomenally. It's awesome, we just giggled and laughed because we knew them on a personal level. I never had an issue with any of those guys, as far as, because they respected what we did and who we, But if they didn't have respect for you, then it was, you're on the wrong side of the table, because then they're just going to fuck with you. It was a funny thing, But that was their MO, or the persona, or the acting, that they were putting out there. That they were derelicts, and they didn't care whether really they were acting, and for the most part, I mean, they did some stupid shit, all the early days a lot of it was politics. It was a totally different thing, because you were hated by the snow industry for the most part, because they were something new and different, and they didn't get it, Like we had our own political agenda to get it allowed at places and accepted, and to show that, you know, it's possible to do everything on a mountain. It's like we were true rebels or pioneering rebels who were like, okay, you're going to tell us that we can't do it. Well, we're going to show you that we can. Yeah, it goes, you know, but the thing is, you know, it's the same thing. The kids today are doing the same thing that my generation did. They don't want to be their parents. Like when I started, snowboarding was not cool. Okay. You know, it was just a new thing, and like, you know, and it wasn't cool. But then it became a cool thing, and now, you know, it's not so cool like the kid to snowboard as a kid. It's much more cool to ski. But I had lots of fun because, you know, at the time skiers had attitude. They, well, that's fine. You know, I don't mind that you make a choice against snowboarding, but let's do one run of your choice and then run one of my choice, and then you can tell me what you think about snowboarding after that.
So I have to ask, did you ride a bunch with Craig Kelly?
We hung out whenever we were around each other, you know. I mean, he lived in Washington, I lived here, but we did trips together, and we, you know, like he came to judge. He judged the first extremes also in Alaska and things like that, you know. But first time I ever went to Baker, we, you know, we snowboarded with the whole Baker crew. You know, that's all we did. And then when they came here for like the World Championships, and we hung out with them and rode with them. I mean, and then when Craig switched to going in backcountry stuff, and we started doing some backcountry splitboarding trips and things like that together.
Thanks for taking the time to talk to us, Tom.
All right, Eric. All right, later.
So iTunes rejected our podcast, and it's probably because we haven't followed the proper copyright procedures with our music. So today's episode has no music except Mike LeBlanc and Russ Winfield behind me in the credits and at the beginning. I've got a few ideas on how to fix the problem, and the most obvious is to get music that we have rights to. So today's call out is for original music. If you have some music we can use, message us through Facebook, and chances are your band will be scoring some of our future episodes. Thanks to Tom Burt for talking with us. Fucking rad shoutouts to Mike Botello, Mike Madliner, and Mike Paz, the Hawaiians who brought us Ice Age snowboards back in the day. And huge thanks to all our listeners. We hope you're getting the quality snow that's falling here in the Pacific Northwest. Come back next week for another fucking rad snowboarding episode.